Jamie Bell, you play the father of a screenwriter who has died in a car accident, but returns to visit his son 30 years later, which is a really interesting, unique kind of story. What attracted you to this story?
I think Andrew Haig, honestly. I think I've been so fortunate to work with like some really kind of unique filmmakers in my career, and people that have really kind of have singular voices. I consider Andrew Haig to be one of those kinds of filmmakers. I think he has a real signature in his work. So when I saw the script come in and knew that he was directing it, I was immediately interested. And then you kind of add in like these incredible actors and just how beautiful and personal and revealing and raw and moving this the story is and was, that I was like, I would just be an idiot to not be a part of it. And I think more than anything, I think what resonated with me, the reason why I think it was so profoundly moving is just its kind of initial conceit. This idea of getting to meet your parents many years later and kind of have these reconciliations and reconnecting and this opportunity, honestly, to find some catharsis in your life. Frankly, was honestly a kind of terrifying prospect. I'm a father of 3 kids. The idea that I would meet them and they would be older than I would be, and like the fruits of my flaws and my failures as a parent would be on full display, and the reckoning of that, I thought it could be a really good vessel for parents and the relationship between parents and their kids, and so I wanted to be a part of it.
What would you say was the most challenging aspect of playing this character?
I think honestly, not bringing too much of my own baggage to it, honestly, because the characters were so beautifully rendered, and so kind of eloquently observed in all their complexities, that I think the mistake would have been to bring too much to it or expect too much emotionally from it and just play the truth of stuff. And the other thing about them is that they are people of a certain time and place. They're kind of trapped in these ways of thinking or these prejudices, and playing that for what they were, and what that time was really like, and what it must have meant for parents to find out that they had a gay son. I think it was important to really portray that stuff for what it was, no matter how complex and awkward those conversations were going to be. And then when you're working opposite someone like Andrew Scott, it makes your job a lot easier, if I'm honest.
And working with an actor who is older than you but playing your son, as it's an interesting exercise as an actor. Like, what were the complexities and like what were you navigating for that?
It wasn't something I really, I didn't really consider that. It wasn't even really brought to my attention that Andrew was that older than us until kind of we finished making the film. He feels so youthful, Andrew Scott, and he also just looks impeccable. That wasn't really something that we considered. But I mean, I guess I have scenes with Andrew where it's kind of like when the dad says sit down, you want it to be like, oh, he means it. Like you gotta, you want Andrew to kind of really listen to that and feel the kind of authority in it. And we all, I think we all have those roles in our life where if someone, when they start kind of getting emotional, you're like, oh my God, he's gonna tip over the edge or something. So, but the age difference we didn't really consider at all, really.
And when playing this role, do you, or any role in general, do you imagine more of this character's life and backstory and history than even is on the page, or do you just sort of rely on what's in the script and what you talk about with your directors?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us individually on this movie was certainly brought facets of our own life, our own kind of biography to it. I think when you're dealing in parental child relationships, it's kind of hard not to for some of your stuff to kind of filter through and kind of end up being very present within the scenes. I think the one thing I always kind of wanted to hold on to and remember was that this man was also the son of someone. Is that he had maybe not had the chance to sit down with his own father and have this conversation, and maybe his dad made him feel a certain way about himself, and always kind of maintaining that the interior of this man, there's also a child, because I think that's what the film is doing so brilliantly. Is it's kind of talking about the cyclical generational nature of love, and how that kind of how it defines ourselves and tells us who we are, and then we kind of write this narrative about ourselves and kind of then pursue these romantic relationships that kind of either change that story or kind of reinforce that narrative that we've made for ourselves. So it was always trying to hold on to that. There's an interior life that was also a child of this parent, and how that affects how he parents his own son.
And you're working with Clare Foy, who plays your wife in the film. You create a really lived-in dynamic between the two of you. You really believe the history between the two of you. How did you work with her to kind of create that marriage?
Again, I think so much of it was just in the writing. I think honestly, not kind of focusing on it too much, I think was probably the best thing we could have done, and just let the dialogue speak for itself. And in these kind of small ways, Andrew Haig is kind of like pointing you to the histrionics of them. Like, when he first turns back up at the house and I say, see, I told you it was him, is implying that there is already some kind of like tension between them. Or when I say to Andrew, like, if you want to see your mom really lose her shit, break that thing. And that's implying that there's a tension around the house as well. And in the end, there is some kind of reconciliation that they also share. She says, I love you. And he says, sometimes I wasn't so sure. And these kind of small behavioral things that I think kind of speak volumes, but, we didn't really lean into them too heavily. And I think that was kind of, that was Andrew Haig's good guidance on that stuff to make it believable, but not too much. And less is more, I think.
And were there any like references or like other films or characters that you look to that like helped you kind of either understand this character or help you with what Andrew Haig was looking for, or again, was it like all on the page?
No, so I think I was certainly bringing male figures in my own life at that time in history. I was looking through a lot of old photographs and all the kind of bad sweaters that they would wear, and all these like mustaches and beards and stuff. And so he's kind of an amalgam of my grandfather, my godfather, my uncle. He's kind of a mashup of a lot of those people. And I think that most of the crew, like for reference and stuff, like the HODs or the heads of department and the makeup department and the costume department would often like show you pictures of their own family, of their own parents or their own kind of relatives, some who maybe had passed on, and just really kind of quite loudly kind of said just how personal this was for people, how much of themselves they were bringing to it. So a mashup of my own family, some of Andrew Haig's own parents. That's undeniable. There's a lot of them in there as well. But he's so graceful as a director that he didn't burden us with that stuff at all. He very much said, make it your own and bring yourself to it as well.
You are shooting also in his house, which is one of the most personal aspects that he brought to the film. What was that experience like?
I mean, I couldn't believe that we were doing it, honestly. I couldn't imagine being in the space, telling a story like this, having these actors in your parents' bed, what that must have been like for him. I don't know if you've talked to him yet, but he said that he developed eczema while we were there, which he said he hadn't had since he was a child, but it started kind of just, it had some kind of physiological response to kind of being in this place again and going through this and telling the story. So I know for a fact it was difficult for him and challenging. But what it created for us as actors was this unbelievably intimate, real space where these kind of real memories had unfolded. And, the house was tiny. Like, it might not come across on screen, but it's so compact and miniature that there really wasn't a lot of room to move around, so there wasn't a lot of crew in there. So when me and Andrew were doing scenes together, or him and Claire doing scenes together, it's really just us and the DP in the room, and that kind of created this very intimate space where you couldn't feel the outside world at all. And I think it's a really loving, great thing that Andrew gave us and provided us with, and I think the movie really benefits because of it.
And one of my favorite things about Andrew Haigh as a filmmaker is the way he's able to capture like emotional intimacy and the intensity of it, even though a lot of times it's very quiet intensity. What was that working process like to, developing those relationships in the film with him as the director?
I mean, he's so hands off. He's so when he's coming in, he's got something really useful to say, and that's helpful. He's so trusting, and but he's also like, I think he's really human. Like, I think he was also full of doubt. Like, is this going to work? Is this actually going to be absurd? Is this going to be like ridiculous? That you're playing his parents? Like, is this crazy? And I loved how kind of willing he was to share that openness and that fear and that doubt that he maybe had. So yeah, just really loving and really giving of the space, and any adjustment was always from the right place. It helped the scene. Oftentimes would say, like, let's lean off of stuff. Let's do it. Let's do this one about the stuff we're not saying, and like stuff like that is just really useful direction for actors. So he's really an actor's director. He really is. I think his films really prove that.
And there are a lot of emotional moments in the film, but do you have one that in particular is your favorite scene, or one that stands out to you the most, that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, the goodbye scene between me, Claire, and Andrew in the diner, or wherever that is, the restaurant, was something that we hadn't talked about. We knew that it was coming up on the schedule, but it was just something that we had not really shared our feelings about, or what we were going to do in the scene, or certainly hadn't rehearsed it or anything. So that was a kind of quite extreme day on the set, just in terms of how, we'd been working together for about 10 days or 12 days or something. So we were all really bonded, really close, and we'd all kind of shared these really emotional other scenes that we'd already shot in the house. So we kind of created this world for ourselves, this family, and we knew that we're going to shoot this scene, and then we're going to all say goodbye, and then me and Claire are going to disappear, and Andrew's going to go shoot the rest of the film with Paul. So I think it was really generous of Andrew Haigh to kind of give Andrew Scott that kind of chronological way of shooting the film, so that he did all the stuff with the parents first, and then we disappeared. So he had this kind of memory, this recall of this intense 2 weeks of shooting to kind of call on for those other scenes with Paul. So it was an overwhelming scene. Me and Claire were crying when we weren't on camera because of what Andrew Scott was doing within the scene. And yeah, I don't know how else to really describe it. It was just very overwhelming.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work on this film and the film as a whole. Thank you so much for talking to me about it today. It's been a pleasure.
No, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for saying so. Good to see you.